Hi everyone! Many people around the world drink coffee every day. There is an ever-increasing presence of coffee culture. Cafes are popping up around every corner, and the market for home coffee machines has grown exponentially, and everyone's tastes seem to be different. Everyone has a different opinion on what is the best coffee. It makes me wonder, how do you make the perfect cup of coffee? I decided to ask some people who I thought might be able to help. Alright, so our topic today is how to make the perfect coffee. What do you think makes a good coffee? It could be anything, as broad or as detailed as you want, but what makes a good coffee to you?
Coffee is really subjective. First and foremost, I think it's important to remember that coffee is different for every person.
I suppose for me it's all about the intensity of the flavour. You know, different coffees, obviously different flavours, and I haven't got a particular flavour that I like, but it has to have a good intensity. Picture a weak coffee that's too weak and watery versus one that's too strong. I would much rather have a coffee that was too strong than too weak and watery.
There's so many different things, aren't there? I mean, really good beans that have been well roasted in a, through an espresso machine done properly, or some other kind of method that's good.
There's a lot to the science behind it, the technicalities of how to do it. So you've got to know how to weigh it, what weight it's at, how long it's going to run for.
This is the amount of coffee that goes.
The amount of coffee that goes. You've got to have about a 30-second pour time. So if you get 26 seconds, it's going to taste terrible. If you get 34 seconds or 33, it's going to taste terrible.
Terrible.
Even 27.
Bitterness is coming through.
Well, it'll get different flavours.
Yeah.
So acidity will come if it's really high, or it'll get sort of a real burnt, watery taste if it's too low sometimes. And that can change.
Because if you make it hot, then that aroma goes.
Yeah, they want that smell.
And aroma is important for taste, but it's not everything to taste.
Tiny windows to get a decent coffee, and massive windows to get a bad one. And it's so hard to get it right. It takes years of practice.
But if I think about it, I can enjoy lots of very different kinds of coffee, right? So I have to say, for me, it's context that makes it good. So normally I like, European-style espresso coffee, and I hang out for that, but I was recently in Japan where that's not such a big thing.
Sure.
And they use quite a traditional method of pouring over filter paper. And I was kind of freaking out initially, thinking, oh God, I'm going to be drinking weak and watery coffee the whole time I'm in Japan, but it was brilliant. I mean, it's very good. It's a totally different ethos of making coffee. And then in Japan, often this is done with this incredible kind of ceremony, right? So you go to a cafe in a nice department store, and everyone's wearing these amazing uniforms. They have these beautiful brass kettles, and it's done, in a kind of ritualistic way, almost like Japanese tea ceremony. Even if I don't particularly like that style of coffee, maybe it's just that place where I was drinking it and that kind of richness of culture behind it made me enjoy that cup of coffee immensely.
I think it is, it's cultural, I think, largely, like where you're from. It's sort of the style of what you're going to drink and how you're going to enjoy it. It's sort of maybe psychological to a degree as well. If you're Italian, you're going to like that Italian style, espresso, standing up sort of thing, but Australia, we drink flat whites, we basically invented it. Japan, as you said, they do the filters and a lot more of that. And all coffee's going to taste different depending on where it's grown in the world.
But there's basically three commercial types of coffee.
Okay.
Yeah. Arabica, Robusta is the Malaysian one, which is Liberica. You said before that Australians basically invented the flat white, and I've used Scotch and steak as comparisons. Is putting milk in your coffee analogous to putting Coke in your Scotch or tomato sauce on your steak?
If you were from Italy, probably. It's a funny one because it does depend on the bean. I guess nowadays it's changed with specialty coffee, where you have a bean designed for a black coffee and a bean designed for a milk-based coffee. And then, back in the day you'd say, oh, you can only taste the real coffee if you just have the coffee, the espresso. But now, it's like, if you have the milk-based coffee without milk, it will taste horrible. So you have to have it with milk. Because it's designed to have a certain amount of sweetness from the milk matched with the bean. But then, so you have that as an espresso, you won't know what it tastes like. So you have to have the milk. But then if you've got like a mil too much milk or a mil too less, you've got to have it. And they even put cups on and measure them out and weigh the milk and add the right amount of milk dosage, and
Oh, there's
just so it's
macchiatos
perfect.
in,
You know,
in
it's-
Italy.
The taste of coffee is about the kind of social contact, right? The kind of sociability and the kind of convivial feeling of sitting around the table together and drinking coffee. So,
Yeah.
like, as an anthropologist who works in Vietnam a lot, that's something I'm really interested in, right? I mean, their coffee culture is really interesting. I mean, it's such a thing, right? If you've been there, you will have had
I
the
have a
filter coffee.
Vietnamese housemate at the moment. She
Alright.
makes the coffee by pouring it into those little things
Really?
and letting it drain through.
So that
It's
kind of
different.
ritual
Yeah.
of, so that's café filtré, right? And the Vietnamese word for it is actually a French loan word, so they call
Okay.
it café fin.
Okay.
And it's the early 20th century, I think, French coffee making technology, which is just a little filter on top, and then there's a little, you put the grounds in, and then you put a little cap on top and pour a bit of water in, and it drips down. And the way they roast the coffee there, you know, the very roasting of the coffee is connected to that sitting there and having it drip down and talking about politics or whatever,
Yeah.
you know, around the table. And they roast it very dark because people like a bitter coffee, because they like to add lots of sugar and condensed milk right to it. And so the coffee has to be very strong so it can survive this contact with things like condensed milk. So they roast the hell out of it, it's very dark. And then they add butter or some other kind of oily substance while it's still hot, just after it's been roasted. And they also put in things like caramel. But people, when the coffee, you know, each drop is meant to be this kind of heavy, weighty, oily drop that comes down. And then the coffee, when it's poured, it's like a paint, you know, it's got this kind of oily sheen to it.
When do they put the caramel in?
When
While it's
I'm
roasting?
told when the roasting is finished and the beans are just still very hot, that's when they put in.
This is technical. How hot would the beans be? Because there's a certain chemical reaction that takes place between sugars and amino acids, proteins.
Okay.
And it only happens above about 150, 160 degrees.
Well, it's
And I'm
probably
just wondering
that
if
hot.
that's why they're putting it in.
Wow. Well, I meant, yeah, because I mean, you see the beans and it's not like they're sticky or something. I mean,
Yeah.
I think this
Yeah.
reaction's taken place.
Yeah.
And so, you know, it looks like a proper bean.
Yeah.
And then, so this quality of kind of, you know, the paint-like or viscous kind of nature of the coffee is something that people really like, and it prolongs this process of the coffee kind of dripping through, which prolongs the process of sitting and talking and drinking.
Yeah.
You know, I have a good friend there who was one of the first people to kind of introduce, you know, European-style espresso coffee machines and that culture of coffee drinking. I expected him to kind of be scornful about this traditional Vietnamese way of roasting coffee, you know, but he's not. He's really nostalgic for it. He associates that. You know, he can talk like you can about roasting and pouring shots and dosing and so on. So that's what he does in his cafe, but he also can really appreciate this completely other world. You know, it's another ontology, you would say. It's another kind of way of being with coffee that exists in a parallel universe of this kind of much more European and I guess much more sort of scientific approach to coffee.
Like the culture is the thing that never dies,
Yeah.
really, in the coffee, but the science is what keeps improving. So when you get science, you also to a degree get ignorance with certain people because they lose touch with the cultural side of why they're drinking coffee and get obsessed with the, oh, your coffee's terrible, why would you drink that? This is what good coffee is.
Yes.
And then a year later they think that's bad and they've got a new one. Oh no, this is even better, this is what real good coffee is.
Yeah.
But you go back to cultural,
That's an evolving taste. That's okay, isn't it?
yes, it is, but it to like not reflect on why you're sort of doing it in the first place. I mean, it's not a bad thing really, but it's not. I don't think it's personally. It's what coffee is for me.
Well, while it's become clear that there might not be just one single answer on how to make the perfect cup of coffee, there's so much more to it than just adding some chemicals together and creating a reaction. I hope you guys have enjoyed this video and maybe you've learned something new. If so, let me know. Now, I made this video for a course that I'm studying right now at Australian National University called Science Communication in the Web. So please let me know what you thought of this video. Things that I can improve on, things that you liked. What was the most interesting thing that you took from this video? Now stay tuned because I'm going to be releasing some more videos soon. Ciao for now.